Welcome, everyone. Hi, my name's Jenny Whitener, and I'm excited to welcome you to our Inspire series, hosted by Bridge Innovate, where we talk about exciting concepts to innovate business for growth and good. Today's program, go on to the next slide, we'll be talking today about the concepts of launching effective strategy design. I'd encourage you today throughout session to use the chat feature on Zoom. Please introduce yourselves. I've already said good morning. So if you would go into chat, and those of you who are attending today, just introduce yourself and your organization. It's nice to know who's with us. And we'll get started on launching effective strategy design. Let's get going. So just a bit about me, Jenny Whitener. I'm the CEO and founder of Bridge Innovate. My background in strategy started years ago, being a part of some high growth organizations in the Southeast when Kaiser Permanente transcended into the Georgia, to the Southern United States, and needed a team to help launch their healthcare system here. And then eventually went on to Ernst & Young and was with them for 8 years, being a part of their overall talent capability and innovation capability practice, and then launching my own business and having Bridge Innovate now for the last 18 years. Let's continue on. Welcome. Hi, Danny. Good to see you. I'd like to get some feedback from you all as we get into this strategy design concept today. Give me some perspectives from you. What types of issues are you facing in terms of strategy design? What are some of your greatest challenges, either that you're working with in your organization when you're launching strategy, or with organizations that you're consulting with? Give me some feedback in chat, if you would. Good morning, James. Good to see you. What are the challenges you face in designing strategy? Give me some feedback in the chat, please. I know from some of my experience as you're getting your comments in on the chat, is that sometimes it's time. People are just completely exhausted with the day-to-day transactional work, and it's just having the time to focus on the design of the strategy, mobilizing it. So I'm seeing getting buy-in, resources, bridging the divide between strategy to plan and implementation, getting the idea to operation, okay, all the implementation component. People want to jump to brainstorming, to judgment, to decision in a short period of time. Good point, Daniel. Disruptions, absolutely, they get in the way. All right, these are great things. So strategy is a very important part of growth for your company. And so let's talk about how to address some of these things. Let's keep going. When we think about strategy for our clients at Bridge Innovate, I'd like to kind of start with this point of view from Michael Porter from Harvard Business Review or Harvard Business School. Strategy is about making choices. It's about trade-offs. It's about deliberately choosing to be different. And so often when we're working with clients and they're going through the strategy design process, we're sort of massaging the points of view, the perspectives that are emerging. And I continue to ask them this question from Michael Porter: how does it make you different? How does it make you distinctive? Is your strategy creating that distinctiveness for growth? One of the things that we do at Bridge Innovate to help mobilize that with our leadership teams is to bring in the aspects of design thinking. And you'll see here in the Harvard Business Review that design thinking now is used for all types of things, whether it's innovation or if it's actually bolting into your strategy effort to make it more robust and innovative. So strategy is about making choices, and let's think about some tips to make a great strategy design. Let's continue on. The first thing I want to talk to you about is the leadership mindset, right? So that when you're launching your strategy effort with your leadership team, of the executive team, how do you get them to unlock new perspective? When you think about this great research coming in from the Center for Creative Leadership, they give us this perspective around the traditional business thinking, and then they give us this perspective around innovative thinking. And our perspective at Bridge is that when we're launching a team through the strategy design process, it's not either or, it's really a blend. We want them to bring the best of their business thinking, as well as sort of open up this new perspective of innovative thinking. Let's look at the next slide and look at the types of competencies or skill sets that we're looking at bringing together when we think about both of these perspectives. Look on the right-hand side around the innovative thinking component. We really want to unlock this leadership team's potential on asking what if. We want them to be open to ambiguity in the early stages of strategy, and we want them to think of multiple possibilities. We also want them to bring that really prudent business perspective that's looking at precedents, that's looking for, results. So we want these two things fused together. And I spent a bit of time coaching leaders at the beginning of the strategy effort that I want them to unlock both perspectives as we go into strategy design. Let's keep going. So the first tip as we think about going to the strategy design process is make sure that you're engaging with your leadership and that you're opening up their perspective around the leadership mindset for strategy and blending both business and innovation mindset. Let's continue on. One of the examples that comes to mind is a strategy project that we had the pleasure to do with Dennis Riley and with David Keynes at Kenco Logistics. They're based here in Chattanooga, very high growth company, and from very aggressive growth targets. One of the things that I appreciated about the project there was how they engaged the broader leadership coalition at Kenco in the strategy design effort. They used it as a professional development with all of the senior execs' direct reports to get them engaged in the early phases of research to unlock their perspectives on the innovation mindset, helping them to look for the new opportunities for the company, and then feeding those new possibilities into the senior executive team for the final decision-making structure. So great work by Dennis and David as they broaden the perspective of strategy across not only the senior team, but the next level down, getting them involved in defining that new strategy future. Great job from this team. Let's continue on. The other thing I think about when I'm coaching a team through strategy is I say, what causes failure? So let's think about that before we start the project. And I love this report that's cited by Forbes. It actually was printed in Forbes, where they interviewed 163 CEOs. And they talked about, what were the 5 reasons that strategy failed? And the number one reason that surfaced in this particular study was the unforeseen external circumstances. So I always talk to the executives that I'm taking through strategy and say, how much energy and effort are we putting into looking externally? Do we really know the impact of these emerging trends in the marketplace and emerging competitive trends? Have we really assessed them well so that as we go through the strategy design process, we're doing that in the appropriate context? So let's take a look at this in more detail on the next slide. One of the greatest joys I have in working with executives is talking them through this, because I'll ask them how much time in their day do they actually spend looking ahead versus looking in the rearview mirror. So many executive teams are consumed with looking at data from the past 24 hours or the past week or the past quarter, which is all very critical data, and looking at historical performance. But I want them to think about the strategy. I want them to think about what's ahead and really encourage them to balance the data gathering to not only the historical, but to also look at these future trends. Let's keep going. I love this concept coming in from Deloitte, where they talk about the future of work and how disruption is everywhere. And we're feeling that as we come out of COVID and looking at, what will be the new normal for hybrid working, for the digital acceleration that we've just experienced through COVID. Look at some of these major disruptions that are happening in the market, and how do we get executive teams exploring these disruptions, these future trends, and then assessing how this impacts our strategies for our businesses, whether it's artificial intelligence and cognitive computing, to the diversity and generational changes in our society that we need to embrace and really understand, or maybe just sort of the change in careers and what our workforce is expecting there. Let's continue on. I love this report from the World Economic Forum, which talks about the acceleration of digital transformation. This is one of the major future trends that we talk about with every team today that comes into Bridge to talk about, what is going on with their strategy design. Let's talk about digital. Are you ready for it? Are you embracing it? Do you have a digital transformation plan? Not only for how you're delivering your products and services to your customers, but what does it mean to your workforce? You look at this additional concept here from the World Economic Forum that says that artificial intelligence will displace 75 million jobs by 2022. But it'll also create 133 million new roles. So how do we understand the transformation of work that's coming along with digital and its impact on our businesses? Let's look at the next slide. One of the programs that we run here at Bridge Innovate is called Foresight Scouts, where we put together a group of leaders that go on a mission to scan and to explore these future trends and to find insights and opportunities related to them. And one of our recent Foresight Scouts programs focused on the future of work. They identified a number of external forces that companies need to really explore in more depth as they formulate the strategy going forward. This is something that I think it's really important for all companies to be doing. Let's continue on. So in the chat, I'd like to hear from you. What external trends are impacting your organization right now? Help me understand what you're concerned about or what shifts you see coming. If you'd use the chat and share with me, that would be great. AI, absolutely. Artificial intelligence, tremendous impact on all of us. Potential and transformation to our business. Climate change, the tech revolution, absolutely. I think there's a huge emphasis on sustainability in a completely new way for organizations that has to be a part of how we work today. The reintegration from social isolation during COVID, absolutely, and the recovery and loss of social capital. Generational differing perspectives about remote versus hybrid versus in-office work. Like, what does that mean to us going forward? How do we imagine that? New digital ways to engage people in services. These are all great future trends that really is a part of the strategy effort. We need to put a team around, gather data around them, and use tools like Future Wheels to imagine and explore the consequences and implications of these trends. And once we understand the implications of these trends a bit more, we begin to formulate a point of view around how our strategy and our organization needs to evolve to embrace these futures, right? So we're not pushed by the future, we're actually pulling the future to us and more in control of where we're headed in terms of that growth spectrum, the revenue growth, the people capital perspective, all those aspects. We're in much more of a driving position because we've analyzed them and anticipated them and we're prepared. Let's keep going. So tip number 2, always make sure in your strategy design effort that you bolt in this future trend analysis into your traditional research effort. We see a lot of people doing SWOT analysis. We see a lot of people doing competitor analysis. Those are great pieces of work, but don't miss this component of adding the future trend analysis into your strategy design effort. Let's keep going. The next area I want to talk to you about is the importance of customer perspective. We see this as a common thread in all of our work when we apply design thinking to our work, but I want to encourage you from a strategy perspective to put the customer first, right? So we know from the data that's coming in from like the strategy design index that companies that embrace the design perspective, putting user experience, design, the customer experience at the forefront of their strategy outpace their industry peers by as much as 228%. That's significant. That is significant. When you think about this research that comes in from Adobe, that half of design-led companies surveyed by Adobe say that design thinking results in more satisfied and loyal customers, and 41% report greater market share as an advantage of having an advanced design practice. Many organizations today are saying the new competitive frontier is around customer experience. It's how your product or services comes to life through that customer experience. We have to really understand that, the desirability of that product and service or combination from the user experience, and then bolt in the analysis around viability and feasibility to get to that truly innovative strategy that we want to take forward. So we have to put the customer at the center of this design effort. Let's keep going. One of the tools that we use is, we love the work from Strategizer. And one of the tools that we use is the value proposition canvas. So when we go through the strategy design effort with a client, we'll take them through this work effort where we take a customer, their most dominant customer, or we could do this for multiple customer segments, and we get the teams to begin to articulate what are the pains, gains, and customer jobs a customer has to complete when they're, when we think about that customer. Then on the left-hand side of this canvas, we want to explore the organization's value proposition. What are they doing to relieve the pain of that customer? What are they doing to create more gain for what that customer's looking to achieve? Or what are the jobs that customers trying to do? And how does your product or service combination deliver an easier path, a more frictionless path to deliver that job creation result? So this very simple map becomes a great working tool in the strategy design effort to put the customer first. Let's keep going. Some of the tools that we'll also see that you'll traditionally see, like in an innovation sprint or design sprint, we bring them forward and bolt them right into the strategy design process. So you'll see the customer experience mapping tools coming in. So we want to understand what the customer experience is, where are they having pain points, where are they delighted with your service or your product, so that we can amplify that. We want to know in those pain points where we can address them and make that more frictionless. And we want to use that as a guide to our strategy design effort. We use a traditional process like brainstorming and ideation to come up with new perspectives around what could be the strategy going forward. And we do rapid prototyping and iteration with early concept testing with customers or stakeholders. So we don't want to launch the strategy and then figure out we made some assumptions that were wrong. We want this early part of design thinking where we create these rapid prototypes and get that iteration going in the strategy evolution process itself. Let's keep going. One of the examples that comes to mind for me is our strategy work with a local nonprofit, the Northside Neighborhood House. They have worked with us for the last 10 years on their strategy design in 2 5-year visional views. And their executive, Rachel Gammon, is just amazing, their executive director. She puts her customer first at everything she does. She brought her board together and she looked deeply at the individuals they were serving to help them become more stable in their communities, and said, what do we need to do in order to really create impact with our customer? Everything that they did in their strategy was designed around that. They have exploded as a nonprofit organization. They have touched so many lives. They've created all types of different revenue models. They've expanded geographically. They are having so much success. And in fact, they are a local award winner of the leading nonprofit for our area. And she was very committed to launching the strategy with the right leadership team of board and staff, but focused very directly on the customer. So hats off to the Northside Neighborhood House and their great success there. Let's keep going. So tip number 3, integrate customer value creation and design thinking tools into your strategy design process. Let's keep going. So in the chat, I'd like for you to share with me sort of your depth of experience to create, overcome barriers to innovation. What kind of barriers to innovation do you see happening with your strategy design process, and how do you overcome them? Any thoughts from our guests today around the barriers to innovating with strategy? Anything come to mind? What are the barriers to innovation with strategy? I know that some of the organizations that we've worked with, it has to do with getting the leadership team aligned. Some want to be very tactical and execution oriented. Some want to be more bold and think more broadly outside the box. So I'm saying, put yourself in a box. Absolutely. Inability to have cognitive flexibility. People are just too tactical. I think it's more about the experience in a specific industry. You might give someone a tunnel vision. Yes, I think oftentimes we take the same group of people and ask them to come up with a new strategy. Guess what? We get the same old stuff. So how do we break open that perspective to really gather new ideas, new concepts? Do we put together, bring in customers as part of some of the early stages of needs and analysis? Do we bring in suppliers into the strategy design process? Do we bring in stakeholders? How do we get new people involved in bringing new perspective? So I see that Daniel's talking about, it sounds simple and silly, but wanting to put everything into a PowerPoint. Yes, I mean, like how many strategy launches have you seen that's like 105 PowerPoint slides? Like, is that really going to inspire anyone? Absolutely. A diverse team. Yes. Jan is saying it's so important to have this diverse team and this diverse perspective. Could not agree with you more. Brian talking about many false starts on previous initiatives make people hesitant. Yeah, so I think if we have to understand that when we're growing and learning, we're going to start and learn and iterate. And I think if we can get our organizations beyond thinking of start and win to start, learn, iterate, and that's our pathway. We're constantly learning, we're constantly iterating. And as James is saying, I think it is true, people are afraid of failure. Well, that's why you need the start, learn, iterate process, right? If it's just go and win, there's a high degree of failure. We have to build in the iteration process. Not making your strategy or your strategic plan operational, connected to employees and performance. Absolutely, Rachel. I think oftentimes it becomes some executive vision or PowerPoint and never really gets transformed to how we work, how people are engaged, how it's involved in our goals. I could not agree with you more. So essential in terms of ensuring that the strategy gets mobilized. Let's keep going. So at Bridge, we try to take a very complex strategy process and collapse it down into 3 easy steps. The very first step, 0, really, is just the chartering process. We create a strategy charter and we create the strategy map that helps us see the entire process of the strategy design approach we're going to take with a client. And that may take a couple of weeks to a couple of months. You've got to get that strategy charter correct. Who is the leadership team? Who's involved? All those aspects. What are the goals of the strategy project and so forth? And then we take them through the research and what we call inspiration phase. So we want to create new inspiration so that we can go into the ideation phase around looking at new possible strategies, new possible services and products, to then the strategy design phase. Many organizations go right from research to strategy design. We're like, whoop, time out, stop. No, we have to go from research and inspiration. We have to think boldly around this ideation component, to think of all the possibilities. Then we narrow down to the strategy design process. Let's keep going. When we're doing that today at Bridge, we are doing that virtually. We have some clients that still want to do strategy design in person, but we're very comfortable now using Zoom and our online collaboration platform, Sprintbase, which already has baked in the 3-step process. If you're a great strategist and you're just looking for a platform, be in touch with us. You can just subscribe to Sprintbase. If you need our help in doing orchestrating or facilitating both, we can do that too. But use the tools to help you of where you are. Don't let our COVID restrictions or the fact that we're all working hybrid in different locations stall your strategy process. Just get your tools together and make a winning play. Let's keep going. So one of the last things I want to just leave you with is to think about this concept of educated incapacity. And from the literature around working with executives to get them to think more strategically or be more inspirational in their perspective, one of the challenges that we face as leaders of strategy or facilitators of the strategy design process is sort of getting people outside of their box. And so when we talk about educated incapacity, it's where you know so much about what you know that you are the last one to recognize that things are changing, right? And so the world's classic case study on this is Kodak, right? So they were so wedded to who they thought they were. And then as the industry and the market changed, they missed the mark. You can name them, Blockbuster, keep going, right? We've got to open up executives' perspectives. We love it that they have a lot of experience in their industry, but often their strength can be their weakness, right? So we have to help them understand, build on that strength of your experience, but open yourself to get beyond your bias, to get beyond those historical boundaries, and then think more innovatively as we go into strategy. Let's keep going. So tip number 4, don't leave the strategy to chance. Create a strategy design map. This will help your executives see the process of unlocking their potential. Let's keep going. This is the strategy design map that we use at Bridge Innovate. And all of you today, whether you're able to make the session in person or if you'd registered, will be getting this toolkit as a result of the session today. So you'll have this handy. But you'll see on the charter side all of the elements that we go through in order to charter the strategy design process, to the sponsors of the project, the challenges that must be addressed, the goals of the project, guiding principles, and you'll see the design team, who will be accountable from the executive side of the organization to do the strategy design, and how will that go through the decisioning process in the organization. So we go through that in the charter phase. The other phases I've talked about in the previous parts of the presentation today, but in the research phase, I've highlighted for you, make sure you bring in this future trends analysis into the traditional SWOT, customer perspective and competitor analysis. And make sure that you're doing the customer experience in addition to customer voice of the customer. On the ideation side, just do it, right? Many organizations go right from research to strategize. Make sure that you're going through some type of idea jam, innovation sprint, opportunity analysis, but get the bold ideas out there, pitch them to a broad group of people involved in the strategy selection, and then determine which of those elements should go forward into the actual strategy design itself. And then the final component of the strategy design, make sure that you're not only going into the strategic initiatives, but articulate that vision, articulate the future success of what we're looking to create, and then how the strategy pillars, the strategy initiatives themselves deliver on that vision for the next 3 to 5 years. Make sure that you're getting really clear on the leadership sponsorship to go through that strategy transformation and the change plan to support you. So don't leave that to chance. All right, so I've covered a lot of material today. Just want to go to the next slide to let you know that this is an example of the strategy design map worksheet that you'll be getting, along with some editable PDFs, so that you can kind of map this out for your organization, select the components that are right for you. All right, so with that, I'll stop and see, are there any questions about our services or questions in general about strategy design that you'd like for me to address today? Just put them into the chat. I can see that Ashish is looking for, do you have some examples and success stories of start, learn, iterate? Really the small, low risk steps. Absolutely. So we were working with the United Way of Greater Chattanooga. They were working on a bold strategy to incorporate innovation into the traditional work with nonprofits through the United Way. They wanted to launch an innovation hub. So, and they also at the same time wanted to create an additional source of revenue. We worked with them to create some space in the building that they owned to bring in an outside company to see what it would be like to co-work with maybe an entrepreneurial launch venture company or a communications and marketing company. And they eventually bolted in other entrepreneurial ventures into their innovation lab, and that became a revenue source for them. But we just did it initially as just moving some tables around, a lo-fi prototype, invited some entrepreneurial companies in to see if they would be interested in renting space or being part of their innovation hub before we actually created walls and structure. So that was just a start, learn, iterate that concept before you launch it. I see some other questions coming in. What are the best conditions to create when designing an ideation session? Inspiration, you have to have inspiration before you can have new ideas. And ideation is done best as a team sport versus an individual sport. Messaging, what is the messaging to executive leaders about timing of the strategy process? Schedule it, right? And be committed to it on the timing of it. We've done strategy projects as short as 6 weeks, and we've done strategy projects as long as 6 months. It depends on the depth of analysis that you're going through and the scope of decisioning that is involved with the client. So map it out, get buy-in along the way. So I've covered a lot today. I know we're at time. I love talking about strategy, and please feel free to email me at jenny.whitener@bridgeinnovate.com. We have more inspirational series coming up, a great session from Blake Bosworth coming up on multiplying leaders. We also have opened our co-working space here at Bridge Studio in the Chattanooga area. We have a complimentary sneak peek on June the 23rd. Come co-work with us or take a private office. Give us some feedback. We're doing some rapid prototyping of our open studio environment for the hybrid workforce. We're going to be doing some work on the value proposition canvas later in July. And then we have one of our clients, a dialogue with one of our clients coming up in August on the power of customer experience. Thanks so much for joining us today. I hope to see you again soon at another Inspire Series session with Bridge Innovate. Bye now.